Welcome to VCR, Vintage Cinema Rewind. We're bringing old movies to new viewers. I'm Blake.
And I'm Jason.
And this is part 2 of We Watched Ghost from 1990.
Ditto.
When we decided that we were going to watch this movie, I basically texted you and said, I didn't think in my entire life that I would ever watch Ghost.
The only reason to watch it is because of that, the main pottery scene. And
yeah.
I didn't even know it was from this movie. Who knew that was Ghost? Because we've seen that scene so much.
I knew that part, but I didn't know that there was more to this movie. I didn't know that was going to be in the first 15 minutes and that we were going to get through kind of all of the this is what this movie is kind of aspect to it, and then dive into a much more interesting, compelling story than I was expecting.
Yeah.
And pleasant to watch story as well. Because even in the first 15 minutes, Jess said at one point, because Jess watches a lot of Hallmark romance films around Christmas time, she was like, there are much better Hallmark stories than this in the first 15 minutes. And I was like, well, I mean, probably it's partially those movies have come out since then and they're refined their storytelling a little bit based on movies like this and other romance films of this time period, right? But I think it's also because the film just has so much else going on and going for it that, like I said in the other episode, there's so many aspects of this film that you can just latch onto and get a lot of enjoyment out of.
I also watched this with Annabelle, and she was pleasantly surprised because she wanted to watch it for that pottery scene, and then which I loved. It was very I was surprised to see it such a passionate display, and they acted it so well. It wasn't over the top. It was well shot. Everything was perfect, basically. And I was very surprised at how intense it was. And then it completely goes the other way with the rest of the movie. I loved it.
Yeah, so did I. It's so unique. It's a really hard movie to describe without getting into spoilers, and that's where we're here now to talk spoilers. So yeah, so on that note as well, if you haven't seen this movie, then maybe go check out our primer episode to see whether or not this movie is for you. But I think that movie has such widespread appeal that there's going to be something you're going to get out of this, and it is worth a watch in the modern day.
Yeah. If you're not going for something too intense, this is a nice light movie. I think I wouldn't go in with expectations of having your world changed or anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's all of Patrick Swayze's movies. There's always something to love about Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason to go back to him, but it's not necessarily top cinema.
Yeah.
This is a great popcorn flick. Let's get into full spoilers now. So for me, when this movie's highs are in two places. And the first highs are whenever Patrick Swayze is a ghost. And whenever Patrick Swayze's learning about how
ghost powers
rules
work
and laws of being a ghost works.
Yeah.
So when Patrick Swayze dies, at that point I wrote down, because I didn't realize Patrick Swayze had died at that point in time. They do it extraordinarily well.
Where he keeps running.
Yeah, where he keeps running.
Yeah.
And so you don't know that he's died at that point in time. And so I actually wrote down on my piece of paper, is this the most death fake-outs in a movie ever? Because we had probably a couple times prior to this where Patrick Swayze's character could plausibly have died. And so it kind of makes me think back to The Walking Dead, where Glenn's character gets death fake outs for a season and a half before he actually kicks the bucket.
Yeah.
Or eats the bat, I guess. But anyway, so at that scene, I was pleasantly surprised with how they did it. They got me. I thought Patrick Swayze's character was still alive, and I actually thought for a second that Molly had died, and that this movie was about to completely flip the table of my expectations. Because I thought Patrick Swayze was going to be the ghost, right?
Yeah.
But the shot rings out, and he keeps running, and you're like, wait, did Molly just get shot?
Yeah, and then also the way he ran and stopped in the distance, I thought he was going to crumple at some point, but he didn't.
Right.
And then he came back, but the way he was walking was very, slow, and, they played that very well, so that you didn't know for sure that he had died or who had died when that shot rang out.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, I loved his face when he realized he was dead. I thought it was almost that was comedic, and that was somewhat poorly acted. Where
Yes, I very much agree. I laughed out loud with his facial expressions with
Yeah.
that, and I was also wanted to bring that up too.
Yeah.
Because Jess was like, I don't think you're supposed to be laughing at this. And I was like, I don't think you understand the humor of this acting portrayal in this moment.
Yeah.
Because he is completely like not believable. Like his face is just like it just yeah.
It reminds me of this one meme where I don't know where the meme comes from, but there's this like hippie kid who's high, and he's like for a really long time, like that, like
Right.
flabbergasted face, like he can't believe this is happening. And I think that's like a sign of the times. Like that was just what happened at that time, because when Carl dies, a very similar thing happens. And I found that Carl, the actor, was way better than Swayze as an actor, but he still did that crazy death face.
Yeah, right. I would agree with you. Like I thought the actor who played Carl actually did a really great job with the character that he was given. But yeah, Patrick Swayze is such an interesting figure in film because there's something like quietly charismatic about him.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of a stoic guy,
Mm.
but he's not necessarily the best actor in the world. So it's really interesting because I'm always happy to see him, but I wouldn't say it's because of his acting chops. He's just like a guy that seems really cool to have in a room.
Yeah, I think you'd be so much cooler as not an actor.
Yeah.
like you'd just be a cool hangout guy.
Yeah. Like just a cool dude. But, you know, he like, and maybe that's because his audience isn't like necessarily targeted at us, right? Because Patrick Swayze is like a sex symbol essentially of the 80s and 90s. Yeah, and so you and I kind of see it in him in a different light than maybe what his target audience is.
Yeah, like where he excelled was in his scenes where he's like watching Carl freak out, and he's like, "Yeah, that's right, fucker." Like he's like sitting back all like suave and cool, and he's like you're getting what's yours now, and like that's where he excelled, not the like high intensity like emotional scenes.
Yeah, exactly. Which is really funny because Patrick Swayze, the reason why he got the role is because the director saw him crying on a talk show about his father's passing.
Wow.
And so the director was looking for somebody who could play that range of kind of a tough guy, but also like somebody who can find that emotion within himself and isn't afraid to publicly show that emotion. And so it's funny because that doesn't always translate well in this film with his character in particular.
Yeah.
I will say that like Demi Moore's portrayal of grief is really extraordinarily done well.
Yes, she stole that scene with like any scene like that in the film where she was like thoroughly like distraught, and yeah, her acting was phenomenal the whole time.
Yeah, and what I will say though is I don't know if Demi Moore's character or if Demi Moore was given enough in this film. And I don't know if it's partially because partway through the movie, Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg just have complete sparks and their relationship is just so entertaining to watch together.
Yeah.
And there's so much, what's the word I'm looking for? There's so much chemistry between those two actors that like it kind of overshadows Patrick Swayze's relationship with Demi Moore's character, that for me, like I kind of forgot a little bit about the romance side of things until it circled back eventually. But like, I was kind of, like I said, this is the second part that I was fully invested in, was the relationship between Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze. Like when they're supernaturally fighting crime together, I was like, this is a cool movie. This is the movie that I actually came here to see unexpectedly. And I think I could have done another movie with Ghost Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg fighting crime together. I think there's a really cool buddy crime film there.
I'm surprised it didn't happen. Maybe if it was like made in the 80s, they would have been like, "Oh, we have to run this." But yeah.
It seems like a missed opportunity though, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But I kind of got away from this, but the first kind of thing that I really enjoyed was the ghost aspects of the film. Because after Patrick Swayze dies, we get a lot of like, here's how the ghost rules work in this world. When we're in the hospital, for example, and we meet the other ghost,
Yeah.
and they're kind of having the back and forth, and they're kind of discussing like just what being a ghost is like, and you know, like,
and then you see someone die in front of them and not turn into a ghost. They just follow the light naturally. Yeah.
Yeah, and go to heaven, and then he kind of alludes to like, well, you know, it's good for him going up there because going to the other place is a little scary.
Yeah.
Which we see later
And that,
in the film.
yeah, that was such a good, like, not foreshadowing, like, not subtle foreshadowing. It was gonna happen again, but like, it was great to see it, even if that's where, like, it was still scary, but that's again where like the effects of the day don't hold up super well.
Yeah, exactly. And let's talk about that a little bit. Like, so when the dark shadows appear to take Willie down to hell, the first time we see them, you know what? It is a little like creepy. Like it's eerie, like seeing them, and the sounds that they make are somewhat like I was like, whoa, like I wasn't expecting this to kind of almost take a horror turn to it.
Yeah, there was enough horror there. Again, they balanced it well with the rest of the movie. Like there was enough there to make it, even today, you're a little scared of it. Like that concept. Like if that was happening to you, it'd be scary as shit.
Yeah, and like the second time though, like when Carl dies, at that point, I actually found it more funny. Like Jess and I were laughing out loud with the ghosts, and like the one had like a face, and they had like hands and stuff, and they're dragging him down. Like Jess and I were laughing out loud at how schlocky it was.
Yeah, it was like a kid today would do that. Would direct it that way and draw it that way.
Yeah. But again, like it's not like I was having a bad time. It's not like I was like, oh, like these effects are bad. It was like, well, these effects aren't great, but like I'm entertained by it.
Yeah.
So like I'm kind of a sucker for like films and TV shows that kind of show the supernatural abilities and like build up a magic system, or build up like a sort of like this, in this case, the ghost system. Like I'm always interested in learning like how a director and a writer are going to tell the story of like this, something that you've seen before, but in this situation, like we're building this and we've got all this lore kind of baked into this idea.
And Train Man is where that comes in the most, whatever his character's name is. Like, we were calling him Train Man the whole time.
Yeah, I think his name was Subway Ghost is what they call him in like the credits.
Yeah. But
yeah, like when he appears, it's really interesting. And so like my most recent experience with this is in the show What We Do in the Shadows, the exploration of Colin Robinson as an energy vampire.
Yeah.
I love every time they're just like, oh, we should just like randomly throw in like, this is a law of how energy vampires work. Like I'm just every time that happens, I really get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I had a question for you. Do you think this is the best main character is a ghost film?
There aren't that many, and so many are done poorly.
So here's in my opinion the three that would be in discussion with this: The Sixth Sense, spoilers, Beetlejuice, and The Crow.
You could also go to other genres as well, like Angels in the Outfield. Like I loved Angels in the Outfield, and that's similar time. I wouldn't say this is the best.
No?
It's up.
Well, which one would you argue is better then?
They're all for different reasons. So maybe it's the best of like this weird mashup of a movie, but like
it's been a long time since I saw those other movies, if I'm being completely fair as well, so it's a little bit hard to judge, but
yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at. But like The Sixth Sense, it takes a while for you to figure it out. Like they did it, they hit it well. And like of course that's the whole point of that movie, is to hide it. Yeah. So yeah, I wouldn't put this beside those other movies or really near the top. It's enjoyable, but it's not the best.
That's fair. I'd have to watch them again. I've never been a massive fan of Beetlejuice, but that's because like I'm just not a huge Tim Burton guy myself necessarily.
Also, there's other movies where the dead person has to show their murder to somebody, and it happens so much in shows and movies. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
All right, let's talk about a very interesting scene in the film. The idea of Sam entering Whoopi's body to play out like a romantic scene between Molly and Sam. So at one point early on in the film, Jess looked at me and said, I really, really hope that they don't have Patrick Swayze like take over Whoopi's body for some weird like romance scene. And
was
I
that
was
after seeing it happen for the first time?
No.
Oh, wow.
She actually said it really early on. She was like, I really hope they don't do that. And I said, but wouldn't it be really funny if they did?
Yeah.
And of course, later on in the film, there's the scene where there's a weird romantic scene between
Molly
Demi Moore and
Sam.
and Whoopi. Yeah, and Sam.
Yeah. Sam in Whoopi's body, yeah. They didn't do it over the top so that like you felt like I was just hoping they didn't redo the previous scene, but woman on woman actress like I was hoping they didn't go as steamy, and they didn't. It was more about like connection and like there was like obviously they were holding each other, but it was very nice.
It was done as tastefully as it could have been.
Yes, and I was laughing because I was imagining it going the complete opposite way. In a horrible way.
Yeah, and I think actually, funny enough, in the original idea for that scene, there was maybe like things were going to get a little bit steamier, and the director was like, there's no way that's going to work after they kind of played around with that scene a little bit. The director himself was like, when they were doing test screenings of that, like people were laughing during that scene, and he was like, I don't think there's another way to do it though. Like he was basically like, you know what, I think we did it as best we can, and we're just gonna have to deal with like the fact that this idea it's a little kooky.
Yeah.
And it comes across like that. Like Jess and I were giggling throughout, even though like it is relatively tasteful. Like you know, as soon as he becomes Whoopi, it's
heartwarming.
It's heartwarming.
Yeah, there's nothing off about it, really.
Yeah, and part of it is because like as soon as he becomes Whoopi, it's Patrick Swayze is standing there holding her. Because if you would kind of flash between the two, it would have made it like a little bit more cringe. Like Jess and I, when they're doing the wide shot and they're kind of moving between the pillars, Jess and I were expecting it to switch between Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg standing there, and that would have been weird.
Yeah. I wonder if they played with that in filming.
I would not be shocked if they did. Because it felt like that's what the camera shot was there for. Let's talk Carl, the character of Carl.
Yeah.
Very interesting character. Go ahead.
So, like, one part about this whole movie that I kind of, like, there are a lot of cliches. So when Carl started being sexy with Molly, I was like, of course this was going to happen. I didn't hate it, but, like, it's, like, at the beginning, even further than that, Sam is like, whenever anything good happens, I lose it. It's, like, so played out. And, like...
Yeah.
I doubt this is the first time that's happened either. So I was like losing respect as certain things like that happened. That brings it down from a movie that I would love to watch, like to bring someone into the fold and introduce them to this movie. This isn't in my list of like in that regard in any way, because there's so many shitty cliches, but they do them well for the most. I didn't hate it. I was just like, rolled my eyes slightly.
Yeah, and you and I are very much on the same page with that. I definitely, and actually wrote that down as well, that there are some moments that really feel played out. And I don't know if that's because it's a kind of a situation where this film came out and then it was parodied and copied so much that you and I have just seen aspects of this so many times at this point that... that's what it feels like, or if it genuinely like they just played up like some of the cliches that were already very prevalent in Hollywood at this point in time.
Yeah, like they played around with them in a tasteful way, so I don't hate it.
So let's talk Carl, his character and his portrayal. It's a really interesting portrayal and a really interesting characterization because he's a pretty pathetic, unempathetic character.
Very unempathetic. Like there's no reason why you would be rooting for him at any point, and you're like, I was like reveling in how he was falling apart,
Yeah.
just like Patrick Swayze Sam was.
Yeah, it's a really interesting contrast to Alan Rickman, a movie that we recently watched with Die Hard with Alan Rickman playing Hans Gruber, who is a very compelling villain that you almost want to see succeed at points in time just because you want to keep seeing his character in action. Whereas like I could not wait until Carl was dead.
Yeah. And I didn't know for sure that he was going to die. It made sense, but yeah, like I was happy when it happened.
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same. Like when he died, I was like, oh, I guess I didn't really see that coming because, well, after that, I guess what I'll say is that I was like, how does this pan out in this world now?
The thing that Annabelle and I caught on was like, how is he going to heaven after this? He just killed 2 guys.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean? Like
you mean Patrick Swayze's character Sam?
Yeah. How does Sam go to heaven after he's
because
killed?
It's redemption through violence, my friend. It's some Old Testament shit right there.
Yeah, I guess so.
God likes a good old revenge story.
Yeah. He basically set him up to kill 2 guys.
Yeah. I mean, I did not expect Willie's death. That kind of surprised me. Like, I wasn't expecting any deaths, I guess, post Patrick Swayze.
And again, Willie's death was great because he runs out of his body again.
Yeah,
like,
and there's a split second where you don't think he's dead. Because when those trucks come, you're like, oh man, this guy is so dead now. And then, he gets up and he's like there, and you're like, wait a second, wouldn't that have killed him? And then then your brain again goes, oh, but in this world, he might actually be dead.
Yeah, like he fell out. He continued for a second because he couldn't imagine being dead.
Right.
Like that little continuance of life, or like that's amazing writing and directing and acting. Like that was really nice about this film.
Yeah, I fully agree. Like, and again, it comes back to like anytime there's any ghost lore happening in this film, I'm fully invested because it's all done extraordinarily well and very unique.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot. What were you saying right before that, though? Oh, Carl?
Yeah.
And his death. And just overall his character, like, following along, seeing how desperate he is and how scared he is and his ruthlessness to continue at all costs as well. Like, he is not below stabbing Molly.
Right.
In his apartment or trying to set the apartment on fire. Like he's horrified of the consequences of not getting this money.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I'm going to circle back to that point, I think, when I get to my personal review, because I have some thoughts on the crime elements of this film, but I want to segregate to that.
One major thing that we actually paused the movie and chatted about for a bit.
Really?
Was you see a lot of touching, like person to person touching. And we were like, when did this stop in real life and in movies? Because in movies they play it up a little bit more, I think, but you see Carl and Molly, like they hold hands, and they're just friends at this point, even though there's other like ulterior motives happening on Carl's part. But like there's a lot of friendly, familial, like hands-on contact, which we were like, when did that stop? Because it had to happen after like the 2000s, and it was like a societal shift.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I didn't think about that either. I wonder if it's, again, comes back to some sort of cell phone psychology kind of thing or internet psychology kind of thing.
Yeah, or it was like, Annabelle was like, I remember like a hands-off policy at school.
Yep.
So like, when did that shift happen?
Yeah.
Because in this 1990s movie, you see everyone touching very like familially.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that at all.
It just jumped out at, like, watching the interactions, especially between Carl and Molly, because again, like they were like a best friend trio basically from the start of the movie. When they were moving, he was there to help, and he was joking around and saying like, "Hey, do you guys want to go out to dinner tonight?" Like all kinds of stuff was going on there. I wonder if he was really trying to be their friend, or if it was all just him trying to get the money. And he was a good actor in real life in their world.
I want to say that he was genuinely his friend, but when it's the decision between money and his life over his friends, he chose the darker path. Because I genuinely think that him and Patrick Swayze were very good friends, but Patrick Swayze just knew a little too much, you know?
Yeah, and it was going back to like how bro finance they were.
Yeah.
Because that's like obviously Carl was going down this path for a long time to get to this point.
Right.
So maybe so was Sam in a certain sense. Or maybe he was just like a straight shooter. I don't know.
I think Sam's a pretty white knight in this case. Like,
yeah.
There's not a lot of complexity to his character necessarily.
They're almost in like a American Psycho world.
Yeah.
It's not to that degree, but like that's their finance bro world.
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison. I hadn't put those two together, but now that you say that, yeah.
They're a little more human and less obviously than Patrick Bateman, but like what's his name? Jared Leto's character, like that is almost like what Carl was trying to be like.
Right.
And just fell down this deep path or dark path.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a few of our favorite quotes here, and this is really where I identified what the high points in the movie were for me, because I have 3 quotes, and every single one of them is interactions between Sam and Oda Mae, between Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg, which is kind of hilarious. One of my first ones is when Sam, Oda Mae, and Molly are together, and Oda Mae is trying to convince Molly that she can speak to Sam, and Sam's like very urgent at this point in time, trying to convince Molly that she's in danger, and that there's trouble, and that his killer is out there and very much still in her life. And so Sam says to Oda Mae, "Molly, you're in danger," and Oda Mae gets irritated and says, "You can't just blurt it out like that, and quit moving around because you're starting to make me dizzy. I'll just tell her my own way." And then she says, "Molly, you're in danger, girl." And it's just so funny because it's just like ever so slightly different than what he said, but I understood like what she meant though.
Yeah, that was good. She brought in so much comedic relief, and like another, I would say one of my favorite little quote things that she had was our introduction to her, where she's doing a fake like reading, or like with her name is Rosa Santiago. She's like in a chair acting all mystical, and she's like, "I'm feeling something. Did he know someone by the name of Anna? No. Consuela? No. Lucida? Julieta? Josefina? Linda? Maria?" Like that was a really good that was a great introduction to her character, and it continued with how she interacted with Molly for the first time too.
Yeah, agreed. I like how they made Patrick Swayze and her character, and how Oda Mae was going to convince Molly's character. Like, I think that it was really well written at that point in time, because I truly believe that if somebody like Oda Mae came up to me and was like, "This person that has died that is speaking to me, and they're speaking to me in this way," and you're kind of having that sassy back and forth with them, but she also just knows everything about you, that that I would believe her in that situation. I think that I would believe her.
With the details that Sam was bringing up, you could see his the depth of their love and their relationship, and that is what made it so convincing, because he remembered all of these beautiful little moments that they had, and that's what he was referencing, not like his mom's name is Maria or whatever. Right. Yeah,
and that's maybe where this movie is slightly dated, because in the age of the internet, a lot of that information is relatively accessible to anybody who wants to find it, right?
Well, not what sweaters in your closet that you made.
Not necessarily, but there are inferences that you can make, right? About a person. And so I think that's maybe where the modern audience is going to maybe ever so slightly feel like it's less genuine.
Yeah.
Although, as we as the audience do know that she is directly speaking to Sam.
Yeah.
Like, and the particular quote that I'm thinking of when you're talking about this is when Oda Mae says, like, I don't know you, I don't know Sam, but let me tell you what he did to me. He kept me up all night singing, I am Henry the Eighth, I am. And Molly goes, that's how he got me to go out with him.
Yeah. That was a great scene, and I was just looking at the quote that I wrote down for that as well. Mm-hmm. And that whole interaction was just great because she added so much of that comedy, and he was so comedic when he was singing that too.
And the last quote that I have is when Oda Mae and Sam are in the bank trying to convince the bankers to give them $4 million. So as somebody who's in the finance world, I was sitting there like, this is the most unbelievable part of this movie, in a movie full of ghosts and like all this crazy other stuff happening, these hijinks. I was like, I don't believe this aspect of this film, that anybody would just give this one $4 million after like how shady she is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like when she says $4 million, and Lyle, the banker, says, yes, $4 million. How would you like that? And she goes, tens and 20s? And Sam goes, no, cashier's check.
Yeah, like, he should have prepared her more,
but
he didn't understand, like, because he was a finance guy, he didn't understand what he didn't know.
That's a really good point. I didn't think about that if you're a financially literate person, you might assume that somebody else understands things as much as you do and doesn't expect somebody to be so naive. What I was actually thinking of just now was that the other reason why they might not have prepared is because Patrick Swayze's character had such an urgency about him throughout the film that, like, he just might not have thought that he had the time to do that. And he kind of didn't, right? Like, in that particular moment, like, they were, like, getting down to the wire of when Carl was going to send the money to whoever he was sending the money to, right?
Yeah. I loved seeing those computers just as a separate point.
The old style computers.
Yeah. His urgency wasn't necessary because there was still hope, like, probably be a paper trail and they could go through a whole, like, financial audit type thing, because he's a financial whiz, Sam.
Right,
so he probably could have figured out another way.
I would counter that in the sense that we just watch Oda Mae struggle to get money withdrawn from a bank.
Yeah.
So to have Oda Mae be like the financial, like, fraud investigator of this situation.
But he could get Oda Mae to go to his boss and be like, Sam did this to you once, or like Sam's like,
I don't know, that
the same thing with Molly.
But this is where I'm going back to what I was saying earlier. If you want to make a sequel to this film starring Patrick Swayze and Whoopi Goldberg fighting crime together, I'm in.
Financial crime.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm sold.
Another note about the bank. When they walk into the bank from the street, I'm pretty sure that is the exact same bank from Spider-Man, the first trilogy with Tobey Maguire.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the bank that Peter Parker and Aunt May go to the bank, and then the Green Goblin shows up or whatever and starts blowing shit up. I'm pretty sure that's it.
Cool. I didn't actually look at any of the locations and where they were filmed in this one, so I
didn't do research on it, but yeah, I'm like almost 100% sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think Carl died too quick. The glass went in him, and then he was dead. This is like technical parts. We could just go right into that section, but Carl died too quick from just the glass falling on him. It was like it severed his heart, but it was in his stomach.
I really appreciated the guillotine style death, though. Really liked that.
Yeah, the shooting of it and just the concept, like, it was good because it was an accident. He wasn't really trying to kill him.
Yeah, but that's what I was saying after this film when Jess and I were discussing. I was like, but what are the after effects of this? Because Carl's just suddenly, like, dead. Like, with this, and there's a, like, fraudster woman who's known to the police, and Molly who's been, like, you know, trying to convince the police that of all this ghost stuff. Like how does this? What are the after effects? What's the aftermath of all of this?
Molly and Whoopi go to jail.
Yeah,
another spin-off movie.
Oh man, we're thinking of so many great spin-offs that could have happened.
Yeah, Patrick Swayze stays around to try and break them out of jail.
Or he comes back to break them out of jail to convince the world that ghosts exist.
Yes.
And then we get Ghostbusters. Holy crap!
Yes.
What a tie-in! Oh, man.
That would be so funny.
That's wild. All right, let's move into effects and filming. So the writer-director Jerry Zucker wanted to make a movie that would make you laugh and cry and get scared. The film itself is supposed to be a roller coaster ride, essentially. And I think he nailed it because, like, oh boy, what a mix of genres, what a, like, just, you know, like, the plot moves at a relatively quick pace for 2 hours, even though I do have maybe some editing notes that I will bring up in my personal review. But for the most part, like, it moves pretty quickly. It flows between all of the just different genres so well that, like, I think what he set out to do, he absolutely captured that.
With everything that he had at his disposal, like of the times, he killed it.
Yeah. So Oda Mae Brown was not written for Whoopi Goldberg, which is really hard to believe, and in fact almost didn't go to her. It was Patrick Swayze who had to convince the director and producers that she was the right fit for that role. He really wanted to star in a movie with her, and I got to give it to him. He was right. Like, it was there was so much chemistry between them that I cannot picture anybody else in that role.
Were they in anything together previously?
No.
Or he just understood, like, she would kill it?
Yeah, I think that was just it. So great for him to be aware of that. And on that note as well, like, Patrick Swayze almost didn't get the role of Sam. And it was actually tossed around Hollywood quite a bit and went to a lot of different actors. I won't go into that into too much detail, but yeah, it really was the interview that he gave where he cried about the fact that his father passed away, and it was that emotion that they wanted to capture. The dark shadows, so the filming with those, like, the noise of those was so creepy, and the way that they actually created those sounds where they're actually babies' cries played at extremely slow speeds and backwards.
That's so smart.
Yeah. It's so eerie. Like, they really captured a creepy vibe to that.
It's grating. It's perfect. It's a perfect sound for that scene.
Yeah, for them taking somebody to hell. The steamy pottery scene. The pot itself wasn't supposed to break apart when it did, but after that, Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore just kind of went with it and just kind of, like, off the cuff, like, continued on with the scene, and that's what we ended up getting in the movie, which is really cool.
The way he was playing, like, moving the clay around her hands, like, he was just, like, rubbing her hands and stuff while she was trying to rub the clay. Like, it was like it was well done because you could tell, like, he didn't care about the clay. He was just there for her.
Yeah, and it's very much in character with him as well as this investment kind of bro guy. Yeah, I fully agree with you. So here's a note for any aspiring film directors. When they were filming the chase scene in New York, and at this point in time, Patrick Swayze is the only one who's dead. It was really cold out, so everybody was bundled up and kept warm, but Patrick Swayze was just wearing his regular clothes, and so they actually had him chew ice during those scenes so that his breath didn't, like, fog out and show that he was alive, kind of thing. Okay. Which is a really, really interesting little note there if you're trying to hide that.
Surprised that worked so well.
Yeah. Tony Goldwyn, the actor behind Carl, said that he was very much hated after this film, just out in the public. Like, people despised him for killing Patrick Swayze, and there was a point in time where there was a waitress who refused to serve him, essentially, and just kept shooting him death stares. And at some point, she finally came over to him and was like, "I don't know where I know you from, and I don't know why I hated you, but, like, do I know you from something?" And he was like, "I'm in Ghost." And she was like, "Oh, that explains, like, why I hate you so much."
Yeah, that's hilarious. I'm surprised with how, like, wide-reaching this movie was. It makes sense because of who was in it and everything, and this, like, elevated Demi Moore to, like, a high-paid actress. Like, this, like, kind of brought her up to the next level.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make sense how big of an impact this was culturally for Carl to get recognized.
And this is one of the highest grossing movies of all time. Like, when it came out, it made $500 million in 1990.
That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. Patrick Swayze made 400,000 or 4 million, something like that. Like I think it was 4 million just for this. I was like, that's crazy for the 90s.
Yeah. Like, this movie was the highest grossing film of 1990. It was higher grossing than like Home Alone, which came out in that year.
Wow. I guess it has more appeal to more people. Like, it's not just a kids movie.
Yeah.
But still, like, kids movies make a lot of money because of what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Willis turned the role down.
Yeah, and then afterwards he said that he really regretted that.
Yeah, I don't think he could have done it.
It would definitely be a different movie without Patrick Swayze. And there, like I said kind of before, Patrick Swayze brings a very unique presence to a film that not a lot of actors have a similar charisma about them.
Yeah.
So let's talk score. This movie was nominated for an Oscar for its score, and I gotta say, like, it's a good score. Like, they use the Righteous Brothers Unchained melody near the end, which is an absolute banger of a song. Really, really good, really well utilized.
And it was noticeable, like, after the movie, we listened to that song just because, like, it stuck in your head. It was very well chosen.
Mm-hmm. But the rest of the score was composed by a French composer named Maurice Jarre. And our modern audiences aren't necessarily going to know other scores composed by him, but let me read out these films anyway. So he scored Lawrence of Arabia, Dead Poets Society, Fatal Attraction, and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Damn.
So, yeah.
That's huge.
Kind of an important composer.
Yeah.
And what I'll say about his composition of the score is, not only is it memorable, like, not only is, like, the addition of the Righteous Brothers Unchained melody kind of get into your head a little bit, but the film score does a really good job of drawing the emotion out of you that it wants to draw out of you at the particular times.
Mm-hmm.
There's something about that final scene where Sam succeeds. He's completes, like, saving Molly, and, you know, he says his final goodbyes to them. Like, there's a genuine heartfelt moment there that is partially credit. I can give partial credit to the score for.
It gets you in that right mood to feel the right things.
Yeah, exactly.
It sets it all up.
Because if you think about how much of a roller coaster ride the rest of the film is, to get you back into that feeling is no small task at that point in time, I don't think.
Yeah, and if you think about, like, the rest of the film, how on the edge of your seat you are, that has to add into that so much, because they can only show so much, but with that extra like, background, like, feel, it keeps the momentum of the movie going when it's at its, like, most intense parts too.
Yeah, agree. All right, let's do a look back at the times. So Patrick Swayze did explain why he wanted to do this movie, and he said that he needed to do Ghost for his soul. He said he'd just come off Roadhouse and Next of Kin, and he didn't want to be considered just an action actor. Mm-hmm. And what a great idea to be in this movie, because this is one of his most iconic performances alongside something like a Roadhouse. And Bruce Joel Rubin, the writer of the script, when he went to meet studio executives, this is a really funny story about the script. They told him that we just wanted to let you know that Ghost is the best script we have ever read. So when he left after hearing that, like, he was like, you know, cloud nine, over the moon. And then a week later, he was on the studio lot, and the exact same executives were telling another writer, we just want you to know that your script is the best script we've ever read, which is just such a Hollywood story that I had to mention that. And then, like, the fact of how important this film is, it can't be understated how important this film is to the 90s culture, is, like, this movie had a budget of like $20 million. Like, they weren't expecting it to be this successful even by, like, relative terms. Like, they were expecting, you know, they were like, I think we have a good film on our hands, like, this $20 million budget, we think we might make $100 million. And they ended up making like 5 times their expectations, which is just wild. And it basically just catapulted all three of those actors, like Whoopi Goldberg,
to
Demi
the
Moore.
next level.
Yeah, exactly. And Patrick Swayze all became household names at that point in time. And the reason why it was so popular at the time is because it did become kind of a date movie, and female audiences were the ones kind of pushing to go see this at the theater, which is funny because, spoilers a little bit for mine and Jess's review, I actually like this movie more than Jess did, I think, as a guy.
Yeah. I think that's what made it so successful, probably.
Yeah.
Is because women would draw their partners in to the movie, and the partner would be like, "This was actually really good."
Yeah.
Like, I'm glad we watched this and not some other like romantic bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. Like
the romance parts are small but intense.
Yes.
Which is like most of our sex lives.
Well, and even
I'm just kidding.
Well, and even in like the first 15 minutes of like the movie, like we said, it feels like the movie's going one direction, and it really plays to the people who went to this movie thinking it was going to be a heavy romance film. And then it kind of flips the tables at a certain point in time, and that's where me, as somebody who doesn't necessarily love romantic films, was like, no, I'm invested. Like this is I like where this is heading now.
Yeah. I understand how it became so good, like so big now.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk legacy. So Patrick Swayze said that this was the hardest role he did ever play in his career because, again, he was an observer to the action and what was going on rather than being an active participant. Like, I think, and this is probably something that other action stars can relate to, is that when the crucial part of your acting is the action and the way that you bring the action to the screen, maybe doing some of these like more grounded, emotion heavy roles are a little bit tougher to portray on screen.
Yeah. I honestly think his like fighting when he was trying to punch people, and like when it makes sense, I guess, for a financial like bro guy who probably doesn't know how to fight that well.
Mm-hmm.
But like for Patrick Swayze, I didn't like how he was punching. Like it looked so ridiculous on screen. So to me, I was like, he shouldn't be doing any of that. He should just stick to this like watching thing, which is basically what the whole role was for him. Whereas like he was trying to show he isn't just a action person, and I think he sucked at the action anyway. So.
Have you seen Roadhouse?
I've seen so many clips. It's
okay.
like I've seen it, but I haven't actually watched it.
We'll have to do that on the podcast sometime, and I want to do that one whenever we do get to it. I want to do that one with me, you, and Mike together because I think there's enough there to talk about that we, the three of us, would have a lot of fun doing that episode together. But yeah, he's an action hero that his fight style is somewhat different to what you expect from an action star of that era, I would say.
Yeah, it's not as good.
There's a special kind of charm to it.
Yeah.
So the film itself has been spoofed so many times since, like countless times in TV and other movies, and that's why going into this movie, like maybe some of the aspects of the film do feel kind of played out because chances are you've probably seen parts of this movie and other things before. And after the effects of Patrick Swayze, women would come up to him years later and just say ditto to him or ask him to say ditto to them.
Yeah.
Which is so silly.
I was going to say that, like, that's another aspect that really dates this, is, like, the way they said ditto in a serious manner.
Right.
Like, it was,
I think,
like, maybe cutesy or something.
I think I think there are a few films that have done this in film history where they've almost tried to, like, find a way to make something culturally relevant. I've seen this before. And I can't think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, if it doesn't stick, if it doesn't quite land, that it does come off kind of cringy.
And apparently it did kind of stick.
Yeah.
I feel like ditto is a 90s thing to say.
It's just not necessarily our generation's.
Yeah, like I kind of remember it being around as a kid, but it wasn't like when we were kids, it was now cool to start saying like sweet. Like, sweet, man. And a lot of people our age still say sweet, whereas kids younger than us would never do that. So it's like, yeah, maybe the older people who were alive in the 90s, like the teens and stuff, they probably got into saying ditto because of this movie. Yeah, it might have worked, but us looking back on it, it's instant, like, cringe.
Yeah. And there's a quote from Demi Moore from 2013 that I really enjoyed with her discussion of the film. And she said that the movie itself is a love story. It's about a dead guy trying to save his wife. And there's a comedy part, but really it's a love story. And I thought, wow, this is a recipe for disaster. It's either going to be something really special, really amazing, or an absolute bust. And then she said, like the beauty of the film is that at the time, none of us knew. And the alchemy that came together between Whoopi and Patrick, it was magical, basically. And that's my favorite part of this movie is their relationship, not necessarily the love story.
Yeah. And Whoopi does steal the show.
Yeah.
Like instant laughs in every scene, basically.
Yeah. I've got a rap legacy to this, rap hip-hop. If you've ever heard a rap or hip-hop song that uses the phrase, I'm Swayze, this is actually a reference to this movie. And what it means is that basically it's a replacement of I'm Ghost, which means like I'm ghosting somebody or I'm leaving. And the main person who actually used this was the Notorious B.I.G. Used it in a few of his songs to say I'm Swayze. So, yeah. So
that's hilarious.
Yeah. So our rap and hip hop fans are definitely going to hear that and not be able to unhear that ever again.
Yeah.
So
that's very interesting.
Yeah, really cool. Sequels, prequels, and reboots. The film itself is an original piece, but when the writer of the film, where he got the idea from, was actually watching a production of Hamlet. And particularly when Hamlet's dead father is telling him to avenge his death, he thought that idea would make a really good movie about a ghost trying to avenge somebody's death. And I gotta say, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I think that this movie actually does do a really good job of almost becoming a modern day Shakespearean tale.
Yeah.
And my thought process on that is because of the inspiration from Hamlet, but there's actually also direct references to Macbeth as well throughout the film. There's a few references, like they go to see Macbeth in the theater at the beginning. I think that the way that they teach Shakespeare in school isn't maybe the best way. I don't know if I resonated with Shakespeare at all, but from what I've heard, if you go and see it live, there's a lot of comedy that to Shakespeare's plays that you miss in awkwardly reading it as a teenager, that I think that this movie captures really well. And I almost think that it could be considered like Shakespearean in a sense.
Now that you mention it, I definitely see all the correlations, and I do agree it does make a good modern day representation of Shakespearean plays. Especially because with plays you really have to ham it up in certain areas, and they kind of do that.
Yeah.
So and they bring the height of emotions up fairly frequently. I see it.
I'm glad that you see it, that you're on board with that idea.
Yeah.
So remakes. So there's been 2 Indian remakes that were made immediately after. I'm talking within a couple years, there was 2 Indian remakes of this.
2 Bollywood?
Yeah, complete knockoffs. Yeah. And then more recently, there was a Japanese remake. I want to say it was 2013, but I can't quite remember the date.
It was 2013. I just saw that.
Funny enough, current relevancy to today's day and age. Back in January of 2023, so not too long ago, a couple weeks ago, Channing Tatum actually bought the rights to this film and is planning on remaking this film with him starring as Patrick Swayze's character.
No way.
Yeah, so...
I saw somebody was also thinking about making it into a series.
Oh, interesting.
It was a year or 2 ago, I think 2020.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what Channing Tatum does with it. Channing Tatum's an actor that has surprisingly good depth to his roles, and I'm always happy to see him in a film.
Yeah, he's often playing someone dumb.
Yeah.
But he plays it smart.
Yeah.
There's intelligence behind how he plays it.
Yeah.
So I agree.
So it'll be interesting to see what he does with the character and the role. I mean, if he's listening to this podcast right now and he wants to make a movie that's basically a crime thriller with somebody of Whoopi Goldberg's stature, then I'm here for it. I'm fully invested. I'll buy out a full theater. I'll put it out there right now, Channing. I will pay for a full theater viewing with as many people as I can get to go see that.
I'm gonna tweet at him or something.
Sounds good. What's really interesting is there hasn't been any sequels to this film. And the reason why is actually not because for the lack of trying for Paramount. They really, really did want to create a sequel, but not a single person from the original film had any interest, and they couldn't sign any of them. Like, not the director, writer, Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, Whoopi Goldberg. They all thought it was a bad idea, and so they never made a sequel because... And good on all of those people to not take the money and run, right? So a lot of respect there.
Yeah. I feel like if this was made a few years more recent, they might have went for it.
Yeah, probably post 2005. Like, I can very much see us being on Ghost number like 6 now.
Yeah. 2 Ghosts, 2 Fears. There's 2 Patrick Swayzes.
Die Hard or Ghost Forever.
Yeah, Ghost Forever, yeah.
All right, so personal reviews and the partner factor. I expect as the audience of our podcast, you kind of know where we sit on this, but I'll talk mine and Jess's review first. I really like this. I was surprised by how much I like this film, and I enjoyed this more than Jess, I think. Not going on my like top list of all time, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I think I'm going to return this movie in the next few years. Like, I think this is a movie that was entertaining enough that, you know, I'll be sitting at home one night and Ghost will pop up on whatever streaming platform I'm scrolling through, and I'll go, yeah, I'm down. I think, though, that the film could have used a bit of a cut, and this is where I'm coming back to something I talked about earlier, is it's a just over 2-hour movie, and I think that this movie could use a 10 to 20 minute cut to the time. And the reason why I say that is because at 2 hours, it feels like this movie should have more depth to it than it does. And what I'm particularly referring to is the crime element of this film, because we really don't know anything about Carl and what the crime aspect of this film, but it's so central to the story that missing that element and why he's so afraid, and like even how he got in this mess to begin with, like I want to understand more of that, but the film never really gives us any of that. And that's not necessarily the story it's telling, but it's the story that I want to hear nonetheless.
Yeah, so what would they cut to replace that with, to keep it at 2 hours, or just cut out that extra time?
I think that if you cut this movie like 20 minutes somewhere in the middle, because, and this is what Jess said as well, like Jess got a little irritated in the middle. She's like, because we paused it because I had to go to the washroom. And it was around the hour mark. And she's like, how's there an hour left in this movie? Because we already know who the killer is. We know where this is heading. Like, where's there another hour in this movie? And I do in part kind of agree with her, because there's no real depth to the actual crimes being committed. So like, it's not like we care about that necessarily. So there's probably some running around that could have been cut down.
If he could fly, maybe, as a ghost.
Well, he just
then
appears.
He could have just...
Like, I don't think he has to walk to places specifically.
No, he does.
Really?
He has to take the subway.
Oh, yeah, that's true. But didn't he get to, like, Oda May's place, like, really quickly? I don't know. There's
because he could walk through walls
and
not pay for stuff.
Yeah, true. But yeah, like I think that if you didn't want to have that level of depth in this movie, that you should have made it a little bit of a quicker runtime. Is just my thought anyway.
I could agree with that. I think we also experienced that where we're like, oh, there's still an hour left. Like, we were into it enough to keep going, and it wasn't a problem, but it was just shocking that there's still an hour left.
Yeah.
For our review, we probably liked it about the same, which is... we liked it well enough to watch it once, I think, and be like happy with it. Probably not discuss it or remember it that much, except when it comes up in pop culture or like discussion or whatever. Yeah, overall it was good. It wasn't great. It was great at the time, sure.
Yeah.
I respect it, but like I wouldn't watch it again on purpose unless like I ran out of other movies to show my future kids or something. Like I had already run through like 500 movies before this. It's not even close to like a top of my list, I think. Like there's other Patrick Swayze movies that I would watch before this. It was good though.
It fits into a weird area of film where it's like I really had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It's not like a masterpiece by any means, but it's completely serviceable.
Yeah, like it's like if I had one big bag of all the movies that I would watch or show someone, it would be in the bag just loose. It wouldn't be in like a pocket inside the bag of like, I want this type of movie or I want that type of movie. It would just be rattling around in the bottom of my bag. Like, I don't love it, but it's good.
You know where it sits in? It's a watch where you're like, I don't understand how Ghost made 500 million at the box office, and I don't understand why Ghost is so largely important to the 90s. It's like, well, give it a watch, and you'll understand like why it had such widespread appeal.
If I was going for like nostalgia, it would fit into a nostalgia box for me, because it does give so much of what the 90s was, or define like the decade a little bit. At the beginning of the decade, it was like, this is what the 90s is going to be like. So like, it fits into a nostalgia box for me.
You know what I equate this to is Avatar, the first Avatar movie. It's a movie that had widespread appeal, did crazy numbers at the box office, but the cultural impact of it is a little bit more
subtle.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because it seemed like it should have a huge cultural impact, Avatar.
Yeah.
But like, after you had watched it, you're like, it was good.
Yeah, that's exactly what you feel like coming out of this one. Is it's good.
That's pretty fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So will you ever return to this movie then? It doesn't sound like it's necessarily top of your list to return to, but
yeah, no. I hopefully have like 50 years left of my life, so I think I'll eventually I'll watch
I laugh
it again.
because I doubt you have 50 years left to do it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Maybe 5 at least. So no, I'm not going to watch it again.
I think I will. I think I will return to this one someday.
Like, some of Annabelle's quotes were like, when did Patrick Swayze start getting plastic surgery? Because it looks like he might have a little bit in his cheeks now. Maybe not. Another one, she caught like one of those things that you could get away with in the 90s, but you can't now, is after they had that elevator scene,
right.
Sam and Carl, they walk in and one of them like says to a girl, like, looking good, to like he's like hitting on some chick.
Yeah. Well, and that's just further like building up the idea of these two as investment bros, right?
Yeah, that works there. Annabelle was like, how did she get away with that haircut about Demi Moore?
That's a really interesting story actually that we haven't talked about yet. Is she actually interviewed with long hair and they hired her with long hair, and then she showed up on day one of filming with that short hair because she had decided that's what the character would have had. And the director was furious when he saw it.
Yeah.
And then eventually came around to it and said, you know what? It works exactly for who this character is.
I agree, because she is an artist, and an artist wouldn't be focused on like herself as the piece of art.
Yeah.
She's like, she wants to make beautiful art.
There's almost like a tomboyishness to her as well.
Yeah.
And that kind of works to her credit too.
And she does look great on a scale of women with short hair in movies. Like, she pulls it off.
Yeah,
is what I'm trying to say. I'll leave it there.
Fair enough. So
also, Annabelle was like, no one else could do a pottery scene for the rest of movie history. Like, nobody could do it better than that without parodying it.
It's a scene that instantly like cemented itself as the best of what it's trying to accomplish and the aspect of what it's doing, and you'll never see it again in film because of that. Until
they ruined pottery for the rest of film history for the rest of
it's true
time.
Probably. It'll be interesting to see if Channing Tatum goes for that angle in his movie, or if he tries to go somewhere else. I don't know what's the sexy new thing in 2023. Is it podcasting? There's a lot of movies with podcasters now.
I hope so.
Can you imagine like you're talking, like somebody's just like coming up and like trying to be sexy while you're podcasting,
touching your mouth the way he was touching her hands, like
yeah. Anyway, so to wrap up, plans for the next month or so here. We're getting close to Oscars season. We've had our nominations for the Oscars for this year come out, and we're just over a month away, I think, from the Oscars. So that will be our plan for the next couple of episodes, is we're going to be talking some Oscar movies of yesterday. We haven't decided yet on what year we're going to do.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the last year where we did 1953.
Yeah, that was an old one, but like we watched Ben-Hur, which is like a phenomenal movie, like a really, really great film that we should have maybe talked a little bit more about in our top movie list, because I did genuinely really enjoy it.
Yeah.
And Some Like It Hot, which blew my mind at how funny and classic it was.
Yeah.
So it's big shoes to follow, I think, this year. And I sent you and Mike a couple of suggestions about maybe what we could do, but we'll have to finalize it soon. But I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I guess on that note, if you have any recommendations for Oscar years that we should pick this year, leave a comment in any one of our podcasting networks or on Facebook.
Even like a decade that you want to see.
Yeah.
Like what we're like, and then we'll pick the year within that decade.
Until next time, we have to come up with a cool tagline for the end of our podcast. We need something.
Yeah.
Be Kind Rewind is like the one that's like
overplayed,
yeah. But I don't know.
Don't share passwords. I mean, I don't know, Netflix passwords. Be kind, share your password.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to come up with something. That's for another episode anyway. So anyway, Have a good one, everyone.
All right. Bye.